We see Dunk heavy breathing. He is completely petrified. He is even more terrified than Daron. We knew Dunk had some combat experience from his times with Sir Arlan, but he's probably the one with the least jousting experience. And even though everyone in a trial of 7 is at risk, he's the one with the higher stakes. After spending some seconds paralyzed, he gets his horse moving, and he's barely getting by. He gets his guts pierced by Erion's lance. It is not surface level, it would be enough to make him lose the fight. And while he was just trying not to succumb to the pain, he got flailed in the head, making him fall off his horse in an improper way. We just saw one of the Hesbury's dying in just this exact way. I remember when I was a kid, the flail was one of the most terrifying weapons I could conceive. Just imagine being hit by this. Getting cut down by a sword seemed like a much better outcome. What Dunk has endured so far would be enough for most men to straight up die. And Dunk doesn't die, although he's in the process of doing so he starts getting his backstory flashbacks. We see how he was living day to day with Rafe, until she gets killed by the corrupt city gold cloak, Alistair, after seeing the only pillar of his life dying in his hands. He attacks the culprit. He is bloodlusted. He even starts biting him, but he has got zero idea of how to damage him effectively. He has no combat experience, and he's only a teenage starved boy against 2 grown armed men. He gets brutally stabbed in the leg, and this is when we see that he had the potential in him, because he was gonna get stabbed again, but he parried the attack. Then Sir Arlan of Pennytree performs this badass kick and annihilates both Alistair and his partner in crime, all the while being extremely drunk to the point of throwing up, and in an environment disadvantage due to using a long sword in a narrow alley. Dunk starts following Sir Arlan with his untreated wound, which is probably severely infected, and he is starving, so his body doesn't have enough resources to heal it. He keeps on following Sir Arlan while handicapped, with no intent of making him notice his presence. It's all out of some kind of existential desire. In the previous episodes, we saw how much he placed Sir Arlan on a pedestal, while the old man wasn't really worth all that much praise, if we are being honest. But after this flashback, it's clear that Sir Arlan was a bastion of light in Dunk's life, the closest thing he had to a religious experience. After some time, Dunk bandaged his wound, but he's still in no condition to hunt, and he's starved, sleeping in the cold rocks, without accessing Sir Arlan's campfire. He's sharpening a stick on his own, so he now has a weapon, at least, and he's still limping, and he's also nerfing himself by drinking stagnated water. I have been emphasizing for some time already how he was defenseless against the cold, but here we see him literally freezing to death. No exaggerations. Look at his skin, he's purple. Any other person would die in this situation, but Dunk still has some energy left in him. He could walk to the campfire and stop the hypothermia, but he chooses not to, and if you don't believe me, let's flash forward to the next scene where he keeps on walking following Sir Arlan until he collapses. We can guess it's not the first time he has collapsed following him, but he always manages to continue. But this time it's different, because the Hedge Knight notices him, and he tells Dunk to get up one more time, and Dunk, now named Sir Duncan, decides he will get up. But while all this was going on inside Dunk's head, someone literally trips with it, and he gets flailed in the head again, but he instantly gets up, like if all those injuries were only a warm-up, and then he gets flailed again, but he doesn't care. He doesn't go down, and then Maker appears and strikes Dunk with his mace. We know Maker is a powerhouse, we know what a strike from him can do to someone, and here he was riding on his horse, which makes the blow even deadlier. And even though this doesn't involve Dunk, I've got to emphasize how cool Baylor looks here, getting one of the cleanest hits ever against Maker. Dunk manages to get up again. If the fight stopped here, his endurance performance would have been historical already. But he still gets flailed 2 more times, and after that, he still manages to dodge 2 more flails. And not only that, he got Erion down to the floor. Erion quickly gets on top of him, But it doesn't matter, because even though he's been lanced, hammered, and flailed, he's got the strength advantage here. It isn't until Arion stabs him that he loses the advantage, and he gets his hands severely cut. To inflict damage to Arion, he has to use his hands, and now they are also really wounded. Everything just got harder, and from all the hits he took, the before was already borderline impossible. But Raimund, our beloved, who surprisingly is still alive, gets a clean hit on Arion, saving Dunk's life. While still trying not to die from his countless injuries, Dunk gets hit by a horse Kingsguard. Having received enough hits to have died 4 times, he somehow still brings Arion to the ground with an open-handed punch. And mind you, Arion was completely unscathed by this point. He hadn't sustained a single injury. Dunk gets stabbed more times, gets hit in the head, and has his eye smashed by Arion's sword handle. But by this point, he had suffered so much pain that each new damage must have felt like an euphoric adrenaline hit. After getting Arion down, he finally wounds him. And even though it was serious damage, it must have been like 10% or even less of the pain Dunk has had to endure throughout the fight. Unlike Dunk, Arion stays down. A lot of people say that Arion was the better fighter, and that Dunk only won thanks to the size difference. And while the fact that Dunk is built like a tree acts in his favor, the biggest decisive factor was his willpower. If he had Arion's pain resistance, he would have stayed down in the first 10 seconds, and he would have gotten killed. Dunk here is scary, and don't get me wrong, he is obviously cooked, but the fact he's up is something that shouldn't be happening. It reminds me of Tony Montana standing after having been shot dozens of times, or Guts standing to challenge Thought and effectively intimidating him, even though he was in no condition to even walk a couple of steps. But that power-up only lasted some seconds. He falls down again, and this time he looks deader than a corpse. But he had already faced all this. He had been dying of hypothermia and hunger, and he still found a way to keep following Sir Arlan. This is just another time in which he has to get up. After Ege screams, the look of complete fear in Arion's eyes was perfectly done. This shot goes unbelievably hard. Arion didn't sign up for this. Dunk doesn't have anything to lose by this point. There's no reason to be nervous anymore. He's been inflicted enough damage to kill 3 bears. So he goes berserk. He starts pummeling Arion's face with his own helmet, and then punches him repeatedly until Arion has no choice but to die or surrender. Dunk could have killed him, but his main character trait is that he's someone who follows the theoretical idealized rules, even if he's the only one, and even if it's against his own well-being and convenience. He carries Arion by his leg, and once he withdraws his accusations, Dunk pushes him like he deserves. This whole sequence was incredibly iconic. There was a lot of hype about Dunk's fighting skills. I heard someone saying that just by seeing him swinging his sword in the first episode, they already knew he was a beast. And I felt the same. But this trial of 7 presented a possibility that was maybe even more interesting. Dunk knew how to fight, but his skills were nowhere near those of someone with the thousands of hours of formation of Arion. But there was something that Dunk had been honing since he was a teenager, something in which he vastly surpassed the rest of the participants of the Trial of 7. Sheer willpower in the face of adversity and severe physical pain. That's why, in the Trial of 7, Dunk's willpower was unmatched.